Hey friends and neighbors, let's talk about God's impeccable timing.
Welcome to A Word for Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Each Wednesday you will find Boggs Family Ministries is here with our host, Davy Boggs. Having you along with us is a wonderful addition. Now, let's enjoy together A Word for Wednesday.
Thank you, Brother Devin, and thank you for joining us on A Word for Wednesday. I'm still recording up here in my study in the barn. I love recording up here. I wish I could record every week up here, but logistically, that'd be a little bit impossible. I didn't build this as a YouTube studio. Obviously, the lighting is not perfect. It's not even good at times, but sound is good. It's comfortable. I like being up here. My books are here. So I want to talk to you today about God's impeccable timing, God's perfect timing. He may not come when you want him, but he'll be there right on time. He's an on-time God. Yes, he is. I woke up thinking about this a couple Sunday mornings ago. In fact, I told this in my preaching that morning at my home church at Dryden Road in Dayton. I since have went back and looked at my notes from that night, refreshed my mind with the details, and it's just another case of God having perfect, impeccable timing. The day was December 3rd, 2012, if my notes are correct, and I believe they are. We were preaching an outdoor crusade on the edge of the city of Abeokuta, out near the bush, Ogun State, Nigeria, for Brother Shabanki. Brother Shabanki had told me a year or so before, he said, I feel like going out to the edge of the city this direction. We didn't have a church that direction. He didn't have a church that direction, and I want to start a church. Well, I said, well, we'll help you do it. I said, what do you do first? He said, we build a building. We don't build a congregation. We built a building. So we began to help them financially. A lot of churches helped them. We helped as much as we could. By the time we got there in December of 2012, the block walls were up, the concrete floor was poured, and the rafters and the roof was on. It was still a long ways from being finished. It was about a year later when Kelly and I went over on a quick trip and dedicated that church to a full house of people. So when I knew the building was up, I said, hey, is there any way we could go out there and preach a revival to try to get that church started? Like I said, it wasn't near done. He said, yes. That this was by email and phone conversation ahead of time. He said, we'll go out there and we'll preach a crusade. We'll have 3 or 4 nights of crusade, and we'll invite people from the neighborhood, in the bush, the area, to come to revival. We ended up at the end of 3 nights, there were 26 people saved to begin the work at Asada Road, the new church. 26 people. They started having church that next Sunday. Even though it wasn't near finished, we bought some chairs, and those 26 people had a church home from day one. It was an amazing thing. Loved the privilege of being a part of it. I thought it was the first night, but reading my notes, it was the second night of the crusade. It was a very hot night when this particular thing happened. Usually, I guess all the time when I've preached an outdoor crusade in Nigeria, around Abeokuta or in Ibadan or other cities, there's always a police presence there. They're there to kind of watch over things, make sure nobody interrupts the meetings, make sure everybody stays safe, because it's a nation that can be unsafe, religious unrest at times, especially further north, much further north than we go. But in the abundance of caution, I suppose, they send about 3 policemen out to stand. They usually stand next to a building or next to the wall. Usually their presence is, I don't even see them. I don't even know they're there. Oftentimes it's about dark when I get there, and they leave when the meeting's over. I don't even see them usually. This was a hot, sunny evening as we started, and There was no buildings around. This is bush. They stood in the open sun on the other side of the dirt road from where we had our platform set up. They were right out in the open, right out in the heat. We took them some water over before service, myself and Brother Gary Lockwood, who had traveled with us that time. And we're just talking to them. Two of them had like AK-47 type rifles with an ammunition belt, and one of them had a big gas canister gun with a belt with gas canisters in it, probably tear gas, I suppose. And we began to talk to them just to make friends. You know, when guys have the only guns, I want them to know what side they're on. You know, I want to be friendly to them. So we went over and talked to them, and we talked about guns. And I had Brother Gary show pictures. He had brought pictures at my request of some of the hunts he had been on, hunting elk and moose and bear, and they were fascinated by that and fascinated by the pictures of the guns. The public's not allowed to have guns there. They do as policemen, of course, and they said, "You have guns. We've heard you have guns in the United States." And we talked about guns and personal guns we had. They were fascinated by my wife's gun. Of course, we didn't have it with us, but just the year or so before, we had preached a Christmas revival at a church, and they had given my wife a pink Taurus 380. And they were fascinated by a pink gun, and that my wife could shoot a gun and was allowed to carry a gun in the United States if she chose to do so. So we had a great conversation with them first night, again the second night. We had a wonderful service that second night. It was the best response of the meeting. I went back in my notes and I preached the message that I've preached a lot on Mephibosheth, on God loves broken people. God loves people that are hurting. And we had a wonderful response in the altar that night. It was terrific. I don't remember how many responded, but they came and prayed, and Brother Shabanki's people, they had come from all of his churches, and great crowd, and they gather in, they pray with those people, they get their information, they talk to them, they find out where they live, answer any questions they have. It's just a well-oiled evangelistic machine, like it ought to be. And they have a follow-up system. And so after church, oftentimes people will want to come and talk to the visiting minister, other ministers, preachers, pastors, and sometimes people that have been saved. And we were trying to leave. They were trying to get me to the van, but I was still talking to people. And they brought a man to the front of the line, and it was one of the policemen. He put out his hand. He said, "I am here on duty. I'm not allowed to mix with the people. I have to keep my eye open. I'm in uniform. I can't participate in the service, but I want you to know something. When you made the altar service tonight and you invited people to know Christ, I gave my heart to God and dedicated my life to Christ. I want you to know that." And his name is Julius. That's all I got was his first name. And I did get a picture with him. I'll try to put that picture up here. I took that picture with him. I shook his hand, and he was gone. Gone into the night. I've never seen him again. That was over 10 years ago, December 3rd, 2012. That man came on duty. I don't know if that's a good assignment or not. To have to go out and stand in the open and watch this service. I don't know if that's an assignment people volunteer for or people hate. I don't know. I've never asked them. But that was his assignment. Some sergeant said, "I want you three to go. I want you to go out there to the edge of the bush, guard this service, make sure everything's okay, stay till it's over, come on back or go over to this other place." I don't know if it was a plum assignment or a horrible assignment, but it was the right assignment. How does a kid from Waynesville, Ohio end up preaching in Nigeria anyway? I mean, how does that happen? How do I get there? That was, I don't know how many trips we had made at that time. We started going in 2007. I met Brother Shabanki. I actually saw Brother Shabanki down at Highway of Holiness in Hamilton years before when we lived here in Ohio. I went down there and heard him in a service. He had been to Dryden Road. It was a Tuesday night, and I was on night shift that week. My wife had saw him, but I didn't see him there. I saw him down at Highway. Then when I was evangelizing early, 20 years ago, I started hearing about him. He came to a revival in 2006. I happened to preach on faith that night, which is a reoccurring subject in my preaching and one of his favorite subjects. He invited me that night to Nigeria. I want you to come. I want you to come and preach to our preachers. I want you to come and preach a gospel crusade. And I literally laughed at him the first time he asked me. I thought he was joking. There's no way I'm going to go to Africa. But the next day, the preacher who brought him, Brother James Feller, said, Brother Shabanki wondered why you laughed at him. He was serious. And my wife and I talked about it. Kelly and Odie, we talked about it, all three of us. And we instantly knew this is something we need to do. We need to plan to do this. So in 2007, we made our first trip. We've been there several times, preached in several churches and preached several meetings, ministers' conferences, crusades. We loved the people. They loved us at that time. We had started already supporting the school 2 years before and helped it get started and keep it going, and then helped build this church. Later went and dedicated, preached the opening revival for that church. But how does that happen? A kid that don't have enough sense to get out of the rain. I'm in Africa preaching. Think about this. I'm on a platform at the edge of the bush, preaching with speakers and preaching to people all over that bush, and the congregation in front of me, telling them how God loves broken people, how God loves to help people who have been broken by life, loves to help people who are hurting. And a police officer that was randomly assigned to that service hears the gospel in such a way that it touches his heart. And although he cannot come across the road and physically participate in an altar service, he bows his head, confesses his sins, gives his life to God, and dedicates his life in service to God. I say that is impeccable timing. Probably Julius was not even from Abeokuta. Oftentimes they put policemen in cities away from their home. They rotate them around to try to keep corruption down. He probably working 6 weeks, go home for a week or so, go back and work 6 weeks, maybe get to go home on weekends and come back. But he's probably not anywhere near home. A random assignment in Abeokuta, a random assignment that particular night, or those 3 nights, 2 nights at least. I didn't see him the third night. The 2 nights he's randomly assigned. We walk across the street. We make friends with him. We talk. We laugh. We joke with them. We get acquainted with them. He hears the message. And now he's going to heaven? Wow. Perfect. Impeccable timing. And I have so many stories to demonstrate that timing. Might be a good series. Don't forget Julius. A man who was random was not random at all. A visit that was random, an assignment that was random, was not random at all. It's God's impeccable timing. Could he be working in your life in that manner right now? Oh, yes. I'm sure that he is. And that's our word for Wednesday. God bless you. See you next week.
That is our word for Wednesday. We are so glad that you've spent a few minutes with us today. If you've been touched by today's episode, please share it with your friends and family. We welcome your questions or comments below or by email. You can find the email address in the description, along with a link to Mile Markers, the website for Boggs Family Ministries. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday.